Question. With everything that's going on in the world today, and we're just coming out of a worldwide pandemic, do you think there should be more trauma-informed churches? Not to the point of trying to give diagnoses or trying to heal people, but to be more supportive of what they're going through, to understand what they're going through, and or to even to recognize that they're going through some things, and to be able to find them professional help or to encourage them to get professional help. Because there are some people, especially in the Black community, we don't believe in getting professional help. We think it's something wrong with a stigma on getting professional help. So I believe that churches should be able to recognize, to be able to sympathize with them, and to be able to help find professional help when somebody needs one. That's what I'm talking about today. And my question is, do you think there should be more trauma-informed churches? Because see, as for me, I can look at it from both sides. One side is, I've been preaching for over 20 years now. I've been a pastor. And before I learned and started teaching about trauma, I've seen people come into the church that I look back and I see that they was traumatized. And the church didn't know how to deal with them. They would come in, they didn't find the healing that they needed. People didn't support them, and they didn't find the support that they needed in the church, so they left the church and went right back into the traumatized world. But then on the other hand, what you don't know is, what many people don't know is, that I was that person. I was the person that was traumatized. I was the person that was emotionally hurt. Even in the midst of my preaching, in the midst of even pastoring a church, I was that person that was dealing with panic attacks. And then nobody believed me. Nobody even saw it. I was the person that was dealing with suicidal thoughts. And some of it was because, or most of it was because, I didn't tell anyone. I was hiding it. I didn't want the world to know. Even when I started preaching, the pastor that I started preaching on told me, you can't let everybody, you can't let the church, you can't let people know when you're weak now because you're a leader. That comes from not being knowledgeable in trauma. Because if you don't deal with it, it just gets worse. So that's why I'm so passionate now about teaching about trauma, exposing trauma, and teaching the church to be more informed, more trauma informed. Because people need help. The more you keep it in, the more you internalize it, it's going to come out one way or the other. And when it comes out, it's going to be worse than it was if you would have healed from it. So today, in this video, I want to talk about the first step a church should take, or what is the first step for a church to become trauma-informed. But before we get into it, if you hear anything today that I'm saying, share it. Even if it's just with one person, you think just one person may need to hear it. Share it with that one person. Comment down below. Let's have a conversation about it. Have you ever heard of trauma-informed churches? Are you familiar with any trauma-informed churches? Let's talk about it. Maybe I may say something that you don't agree with. Let's comment on that too. Let's talk about that also. Like, share this, comment on it. Follow me for more of this type of, more about trauma-informed churches. So, trauma-informed churches, what's the first step of becoming a trauma-informed church? While I was thinking about this, while I was thinking about what I was going to say, I thought about the scripture in Mark 5 about the lady that had been sick for 12 long years. And most of the time when we preach this text, and I've preached it many times myself, we always talk about her illness, how it kept getting worse. We talked about the law at that time. Leviticus said that this type of illness, that she was not able to even be around anybody. So she was isolated from everyone. That's traumatizing in itself. And we understand that by just going through the pandemic. Many was traumatized because they was isolated from people. We always talk about in this text that her illness led to many other things that happened in her world. Because of her illness, she was isolated from everyone. Because of her illness, the doctors kept taking advantage of her, and now she was broke. And she was still sick. For 12 long years, she was isolated. 12 long years, she dealt with her illness. 12 long years, she had to deal with it all by herself. But she heard Jesus was in town. It's something about when you hear Jesus is in town. It's something about when you know Jesus is in the midst of your trials and tribulations. It's something about when you hear Dr. Jesus is in the town, is in your town, is about to, and you believe that he can cure you from your illness. But the one thing that we never talked about and that I saw this time was she had to feel safe enough that she could even touch Jesus without him rebuking her. At this time, people didn't touch Jesus. He always touched them to heal them. But she felt safe enough to touch him. Safe enough to know that if I touch him, even if I'm sick, she even knew that the law said everybody else that she touched became unclean. So she felt safe enough that she could touch him and he wouldn't rebuke her. So the first step of a church becoming a trauma-informed church is safety. Do the people that's coming to your church and they're traumatized, do they feel safe? First of all, do they feel safe enough to even come there? Because I've visited churches, even gone to churches to preach. And there were some churches that I went to that I probably never go back. Even though I was a visiting preacher, I didn't feel welcome. But there were some churches I went to. From the time I got out of my car, I felt welcome. I felt the love. So do the people even feel safe enough to come to your church? And when they come, do they feel safe enough to keep coming? Nobody judging them. Nobody looking at them how they're dressed. Nobody's looking at them because they know their history, their background. Do they feel emotionally safe enough to talk to somebody? Now we know most cases when people are dealing with things, a lot of cases, the first place they go is the church. They want to talk to the pastor, to the church leaders. Do they feel safe enough to come and talk to you? That's the first step of coming a trauma-informed church. The people, they have to feel safe enough to come to you. Because some of them, if there was childhood abuse and now they are adults, they may not have never felt safe a day in their life. So they need somewhere to go feel safe so they can start healing. Do they feel safe when they come to your church? That's the first step of coming to trauma-informed church. And I'm passionate about teaching churches to become trauma-informed. I'm passionate about healing people that's been traumatized because I've been there. I know what you're going through. I know where you are right now. And so, please, make people feel safe enough, even if they're not traumatized. Make your visitors feel safe enough and welcome enough to come back. Hey, this is all I have for this video. And if you want to hear more about trauma-informed churches, if you want to hear more about healing from trauma, follow me. If you know somebody that needs to hear it, share it with them. Like, comment, and let's have a conversation. And I'll see you in the next video.